Hi, I'm Michelle White with another episode of Liberty Roads. And joining me today is the president of Media Research Center, David Buzzell. David, thank you so much for joining me today.
Appreciate it, Michelle. Thanks for having me.
So let's get right to it. The MRC put out two studies this week that indicate the liberal media is working overtime. Tell me about your first study about the
Sure.
popular digital news apps. Do you believe this toxic and untruthful information changes people's minds? And then looking at the numbers and how skewed they are, what do you think is behind it?
Yeah, so the origin story of our work with the news apps goes back to, well, there was a poll in June of 2025, Michelle, a Reuters poll that got our attention. It showed that 58% of the country gets their news from one of the four news apps: Apple News, Google News, MSN, which is preloaded on every desktop, personal desktop computer, and Yahoo. Those are the big four. And coincidentally, or not coincidentally, those four are all in the top 10 of users and website visitors if you look at monthly website traffic reports. So Yahoo actually is often dismissed as this relic of internet past, but all of their properties combined, they're actually the biggest of the four if you
Mhm.
combine them all. So they have their homepage is just chock full of their own news products. Some of it's original reporting, but most of it are links to some of the familiar players that we all know: the ABCs, the NBCs, CBS, New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So about 500 million people get their news and information from those four homepages on a monthly basis. So you're darn right it's important. You're darn right that these people have opportunities to persuade and to convince people on a certain policy issue. I'll give you a concrete example of this. The day before Good Friday, I guess, so it was Holy Thursday, Holy Week, the shutdown on the DHS shutdown. Apple News ran a headline from Chuck Schumer. It was a Politico story, and they had a gigantic picture of Chuck Schumer in which he was standing in front of a sign that said, and I quote, Republicans have voted to block funding for TSA 8 times. Now, if you remember that week, the TSA lines were 5 hours long,
Yeah.
sometimes longer in certain cities, and everyone's blaming the shutdown. But here comes Politico and cherry picking this Chuck Schumer photograph. Now, Politico, I could sort of dismiss, right? That's a niche rag, it's a niche audience, it's
Right.
Washington, D.C., it's liberal all the way. But when Apple picks it up and broadcasts it to its 125 million users plus, and if pictures speak 1,000 words, you're
Right.
darn right Republicans have a problem.
Right.
They have got to figure out a way to respond to that sort of invective and that lie, and they have to do it quickly and in the moment, in the nanosecond to seconds that it requires.
Mhm.
And it's different from going to abcnews.com or going to Washington Post or even going on X or even going on Liberty Nation, because Apple News, Google News, MSN in particular are at the point of entry on your device,
Right.
right? There's push notifications. They come preloaded. Apple News, obviously, on
Mhm.
iPhones, Google News on Androids. So these are monster news operations in their own right, and they are just pushing left wing news all the time. At one point in January through February, like Apple News they went 99 straight days without a single right wing outlet that they had broadcast. It was all left wing outlets on Apple News, and Google News is not much better. And you see all these different kind of anomalies, Michelle. Newsweek is my favorite example. In November, we noticed that Newsweek had rocketed up the charts and had become the number 11th rated most popular news website in America. You cannot walk 100 miles in any direction and find anyone clamoring to read their Newsweek. And yet there it sat in the month of November, and it's bounced around and it's in the top 20 now. Newsweek in the last 5 months has been shared by MSN and MSN alone
Mm.
over 350 times.
Wow.
Okay. So
Wow.
that tells me there is some kind of pay to play going on. I don't know who's paying which side is paying which side, but gone is the who's got the story of the day, and let's broadcast the most popular story, the most influential story, the most accurate story, the fastest story. It's all gone.
Mm.
Um, the Minnesota Star Tribune rocketed up the charts in the month of January to become the 48th most popular news website in America. The Minnesota Star Tribune. Why? Apple News picked it up 11 times. Google News had picked it up 6 times. All anti-ICE all the time.
Mm.
All anti-ICE, all this with headline gems such as ICE shoots man in leg, and that was it, right? As if they wanted ICE to shoot the guy in the head. Never mind, never mind that this guy was I think he was a Venezuelan national,
Right.
and he was on his third deportation order, and he's running away from the ICE guys, slip sliding through the snow, and he turns around with some kind of a machete or a sawed-off broomstick or something, and the guy's like,
Mm.
"Yeah, you're down. I mean, we're done with this little fight here. You're
Right.
going down." He shoots him in the left, following protocol. I might add, but you asked about the political consequences of such headlines and such reach, um, and that you see how ICE's approval rating, and then the president's approval rating, the administration's approval rating,
Right.
and the appetite for deportations all went down, all went down post all this negative coverage in Minnesota, all courtesy of the Minnesota Star Tribune, and it's being showcased by Apple and Google. So they can set the narrative. These four entities can set the narrative whenever they want by choosing whichever liberal rag they want to. And for us at MRC, we're taking this on as an important new project for us because the country I believe that sunlight is the best transparency.
Yes, it is.
Um, I think people sort of feel, especially an older generation, feels as if maybe like they're technological savants, that they're getting their news from their phones now. Um, and they don't want to, they maybe not have considered that Apple is just as left wing as some of these other guys that they've turned off already.
Right.
Um, FoxNews.com is the number one rated news network in America by a country mile, and yet it gets 100 million less views on its website than CNN every
Mm.
single month. Why? Because CNN is BFFs with Apple, Google
Apple,
News,
Google, big
MSN,
tech.
and Yahoo. So it makes no market sense. And so, we're working, we're doing everything we can on a public relations standpoint, from a government affairs standpoint, to change some hearts and minds. And I want to see liberal news outlets being reduced on those outlets, on those apps, and conservative outlets have a greater representation.
Our guest today is David Boesel, president of Media Research Center. David, yet another MRC study put out this week concerns the government shutdown. What did you
Yeah,
find in that study?
yeah. All blaming all Republicans all the time, ignoring that the Democrat. I mean, we just mentioned the Chuck Schumer's the picture that was part of it.
Right.
I think our number was that they had blamed that they associated Democrats with the shutdown like 5% of the coverage. Five. And the Democrats have sort of boxed themselves into a little bit of a pickle here. They are going to be against anything. They're going to be against the president no matter what, but they are definitely going to be against the president on his top priorities. And what are his top priorities? Save America Act is a top priority. Security is a top priority.
Mhm.
Immigration is a top priority. And so DHS is wrapped up into that. And so they become anti-ICE, anti-immigration enforcement. It's a top priority of the president's. They're going to shut it down. And the media has gone lockstep, just joining with the Democrats in this. Because why? Because they're anti-Trump,
Right.
and they're revealing themselves to be anti-Trump. So it's wild to watch the press just bend the knee to any sort of Chuck Schumer talking point, any sort of Hakeem Jeffries talking point. Even after the third attempted assassination attempt at the president,
Mhm.
um, all the coverage around the assassination attempt failed to to link the Democrats in shutting down the very agency that's charged with protecting the president and protecting those around him. So it's just, we've seen these labeling games played before over the years, where they mislabel, they'll just overlabel a Republican if he's involved in a scandal, and they'll just forget the fact that a Democrat is a Democrat if they're involved in a scandal. But this is really egregious. We're talking about the national security apparatus, the entire United States,
Right.
and to the
And a
press,
man's
it's
life.
and the man's
And a
life,
man's life.
and his cabinet's life, and the ballroom guests and everything. And to them, Schumer can do no wrong, and it's a fight worth fighting. And so, let's not put any blame on Chuck Schumer and the Democrats. So that's what we found.
Finally, Brent
Yeah,
Bozell, your father, was the founder
yeah.
and longtime president of Media Research Center, and you recently took over for him. Have you seen a
Thank God, we're
noticeable
glad to have him out of here.
oh, stop. Are you seeing an
Finally.
uptick in the media bias?
Well, it's certainly the invective is certainly nastier than in the years past. There was I remember my father and Sam Donaldson being kosher. Sam Donaldson actually came to and crashed at my father's request a Media Research Center gala back in the day. So he was the ABC News White House correspondent. So you're talking early '90s there. Yeah, there's no longer any sort of get along moments between conservatives and liberals, particularly in the political ecosystem. Even at the staff level in Congress, they don't even get along. Certainly not the members either. Um, yeah, I think it's gotten nastier. You've seen it today. I'm not sure when this will air, but boy, oh boy, are some of the left wing media outlets just royally ticked off at what Virginia has done today in the
Hmm.
Supreme Court of Virginia, and they just can't believe that the Supreme Court of Virginia would have overruled the rule that people, okay, they just don't know really what they're talking about. They
Right.
don't really understand that Virginia has kind of different rules than the rest of the country because it's Virginia, because we're great. We're awesome. I'm from Virginia. There's a reason we don't like executive power. There's a reason why we single term them. We single term our governors. It's just in our DNA, and we've got strict rules. If you want to change rules and change districts and those types of things, we have strict rules to do it. Of course, the Democrats didn't follow that. Of course, the press doesn't report that accurately. But to your point, um, you see it you see it expressed on television. I would see most notably on Abby Phillips' show on CNN, the liberal panelists, and that's become sort of the talk show du jour here.
Mm.
Boy, the liberal panelists there are personal, nasty, not creative at all in their talking points. It is just orange man bad. How dare he try to fix the reflecting pool? How dare he? I mean, it's a pool. Anyone who has a pool knows you have to clean the thing every once in a while. Um, and here's a city that hasn't paid any attention to it, and anyone who knows anything at all about Washington D.C. knows how filthy it was, and how dare the guy in charge of the nation's capital want to clean it, and they just can't get past their hatred of the guy
Right.
to report even the little things accurately. The ballroom's another example.
Mm.
Privately funded, and I understand that they want to build some security stuff underground, and that's going to be more expensive and require government funding. But the meat and potatoes of the whole exercise was privately funded. They can't report that accurately enough. Um, Anyone who's been in town long enough knows that East Wing was way too small for
Mm.
what it needed to be. Everyone knows that. Everyone's been complaining about that. The president's absolutely right about that. And so he's right to demo it and make it bigger. How dare he? And so it's just it has gotten nastier for sure. You see it. Our reporting is really consistent, Michelle. 92 to 95% negative against the president on an almost nightly basis, and I tell you where it has really revealed itself too. I know I'm being long winded here, but It's morning, noon,
And night.
night, and
Hmm.
late night. It's late
Hmm.
night too.
Right.
It's Kimmel, it's Colbert, the
Hmm.
Daily Show. Okay, whatever. It's always been that way. But the late night guys have been particularly nasty. Wishing for his death.
Right.
Um, that's beyond the pale, and
Right.
so you just can't escape it. And I think
No.
that's one of the signature changes.
David Boesel, president of Media Research Center, which exposes and neutralizes the elitist media. Thank you so much for your time and your
Thanks,
expertise today,
Michelle.
David. You
Appreciate
can
it.
read the full Media Research Center report on MRC's website, newsbusters.org. We'd love to have you back again, David. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Michelle White. This has been a production of Liberty Nation News, found at libertynation.com. Thank you for tuning in. Hi, I'm Michelle.